I think that we can get started. It's 5 past. So let's say that we go. Charlie, are you ready?
I
Yeah.
am. Let's go.
Marion, are you
Get
ready?
started.
I am.
Okay,
Let's
let's go
go.
then.
Well, hello, good morning. So today, what's the topic? Today we are going to show you how to efficiently manage your BoondManager interface and the potential impacts this can have on your organizations and various business activities. And today, to assist you, there is Marianne, Cyril, and myself, your loyal Boon coaches. You may have already encountered us during training sessions or through BoondManager supports, of course. And as I said in this webinar, we will focus on the administration sections of your interfaces, which is not accessible to everyone. So generally, only administrators have access. But you see, as you will see later, that it's possible to grant partial access to manager accounts. We will begin with the general introductions and a few key points that we believe are important to keep in mind when managing the administrations of BoondManager. And then we will discuss the administration and its impact on different roles. So first, pre-sale administration, then human resources administrations, and lastly, production management administrations. As usual, before diving into the specifics, let me remind you of a few prerequisites. We have configured the settings to match what we want to demonstrate today, of course. We have sufficient rights and permissions to modify the data presented, and we have already integrated the necessary data for this webinar to ensure greater efficiency and relevance. Well, let's get started then. I invite you now to take a step back with Cyril, who will start by presenting an overview of the administration section in general.
Thank you so much, Charlie, for that great introduction. Okay, so my turn, part number one, that's the general introduction about the administration. Okay, so let's go to Boot Manager. And first, I'm sure that you already know that, but let's just remind you how you can actually access the administration side of the platform. So you need to click there on your first name, or let's say on the name that is displayed on the screen, and then on administration. Okay, so this interface allows you to make all of the settings for your Boot Manager environment, and some of the settings are common to all of your entities, while others are not. So as a result, administration is divided into several sections. So first here we have the managers and roles section, where you can actually define the rights and permissions for the different users. We have the management and the configuration of each of your legal agency, and each legal entity will have its own configuration. Then we have the management and the configuration of the global settings, which is actually all of the repositories, thanks to which you can actually, customize the platform and which will be common to all of the legal agency. Then we have the template section, quite useful, that we will just go and see into more details later during the webinar. We have the apps and marketplace for the installation and the administration of your different Boot Manager application. Here we have a quite important section, which is actually the alerts that will help you customize and improve your different processes in the platform. We have the configuration of the BU and the pods. We have the translation part, so from French into English or in English into French, depending the language that you are using. And a new section, which has been added a few weeks ago, Bank Connection, where you can actually here add your banking establishments and accounts for which you want to display the transaction in BoondManager. Finally, we have here the technical section for example, to import your data, the developer space for the sandbox and the API part, and the webhooks. Okay, so let's have a look at some slides here for this general introduction. So as we've seen, so today we will not dive into this part in particular, but the access and rights of managers and roles is a very important section, as this is where you can actually manage the rights, the authorizations, the restrictions for the different users, and to keep the confidentiality of the information on the platform. As far as the legal agencies are concerned, as I said, which is very important to remember, is that each one of them will have its own configuration, whereas the global settings will be common to all of the legal agencies, and that's where you are going to actually manage the different drop-down list, so the repositories that you will be able to configure on the platform. The apps marketplace, that's where you will actually find all of the apps that we put at your disposal to complement the use of the main modules. And finally, the developer space that we won't either dive into details today will be for you to import your data using CSV files, to create sandboxes, to use the APIs and technical stuff like that. Okay. Also, what's very important to understand is that on the administration, you can actually modify many things. And when you modify an element, it's got an impact on the entire use of the interface. So something that we also want to recommend is to have at least two Boond trained super user, as we call them, so administrators on the platform. But obviously, this can vary and depend on the size of your organization. Okay, so how can we actually sometimes just delegate some part of the administration, because it's not because you give the admin rights to a user that you need to give all of the admin rights. So for example, you could give only the management of the what we call so the access for the different managers and the rights management that will help you decide what you need to give or not. But just be careful that when you change some rights for the different user, those rights will be those changes, sorry, will be immediate and will have an immediate impact on the platform. Um, what you can do, for example, you could give this right to Office Manager so they can activate new accounts, for example. What we could do, you could also give some right to HR Manager so they could modify some part of the legal agencies. But also be careful here because in the legal agency, it can contain some sensitive data. You could also, for example, give access to branch managers about the repositories, the templates, so they can better manage the organization and their teams. But again, please note that every change that they will make here will have an immediate impact on all the fields concerned for all of the legal agencies combined. Lastly, let's say that you give access to the apps management, so you can do the configuration of apps such as doc templates, survey, project plus. But here again, when you give access to the apps section, that would be for all of the applications. So it's either all of them or none of them. Okay, let's have a look at another slide. So here, it's everything about legal agencies, BUs, and poles that will actually allow you to divide or segment your interface according to your activities, your entities, or even geographically speaking. Let's focus on those elements as they are going to be super important for your interface configuration. Um, let's say that the legal agencies are really going to segment your legal entity, so in legal terms, whereas the poles have more of a role to segment your activity, depending on some parameters that could you actually decide or that we can help you decide on. Regarding the BUs, they are groupings of manager. So what does all of that imply when you do your configuration? So legal agencies and poles are assigned to cards, as we actually see here. Let's say that one difference is that the legal agency is obligatory, so you have to assign one legal agency to a card, but the poles will be optional, so it's not something which is obligatory. Also, you can filter and search based on the three items, so legal agencies, poles, and business units. And the advantage of the BUs is that it will allow you to group your managers and not to have to select 10 or 15 different people part of the same BU. This will also help you have more effective reporting based on particular legal agency, all of activity, etc. Then, as far as the access rights are concerned, that will help you define or open or restrict based on the manager role. And for each role, then we can base that on the legal agency, on the pole, or on the business unit. We also have a notion of secondary poles and secondary agencies that can help you go even further. Okay, so after that first general introduction, let's have a look at part number two. And I think that Marion, that's Charlie, sorry, I think that's your turn.
That's my turn.
Later.
Yeah, me first. Let's go.
Mm.
Let's talk about pre-sales administrations and what's important for you to manage into that side of the systems. For business managers, recruiters, anyone linked to these areas of expertise. What will primarily interest us here are the repositories within BoondManager. So when we mention repository, we are talking about vocabulary and the various drop-down menus available in your interface, the example that you can see on your screen right now. And as you likely largely know, a large portion of this drop-down menu is customizable, whether in terms of terminology used or the order and arrangement of the elements. But let's see that's a little bit more in detail. So let's go to the global setting sections in the administration. And we will start with the first tab, which is called Action States tabs. On the left side of the screens, you can manage everything related to actions. Actions allow you to log a number of elements, such as your interactions with candidates, resource, clients, prospects. And the more precise you can be here, the better. Meaning that you can create new labels for it and, for example, differentiate between interview phases for candidates. You can have physical interview or phone interviews. And in terms of everything related to CRM, you can also create a client meetings versus a prospect meetings for your sales tracking. All of this is very helpful and very useful for your reportings and also to add and monitor targets on the matters. On the right side of the screen now, we have what we call the states, and the states allow you to structure your various databases. Again, candidates, resource, CRM, project, and so forth. You'll find the states on all BoondManager cards, to be honest. And they provide what we call a snapshots at a specific moment in time. And they are meant to evolve depending on the life cycle of the cards. Why? Because they help you to know in which states, of course, the card here. Yeah. So, for example, for candidates, in which part of the process they are, and they will help you to filter by this specific stage in each search views. And it's particularly so important that you keep them updated at all time. To mention something specific on about this and access rights, the states can also be used to add certain restrictions related to access rights on specific cards. Best example would be ensuring that the business developers only see candidates who are already in the talent pool and not who still in qualification process or candidates who are in the do not contact states. So you can actually manage that with the access rights. And of course, a recommendation that you might hear quite a lot today because it's super important and specifically here with the global settings, we generally recommend archiving rather than deleting. Archiving is super easy. You simply click on the small eye icon to the right of the row and it hides the states, and so you can no longer filter on them. It's also mean that you would need to reorganize your card first before archiving. But the good news is you can always unarchive a state if you change your mind or if you forgot to reorganize your cards before. Now they're talking about the little icon on the side that might have draw your attentions to other icons. You can actually add other analytical elements. You can, for example, click on the hand icon. And this one here is to decide if a state is actually an end of process. And so you can include a list of end of process reason. Here we selected the do not contact anymore as the end of process, and we will be allowing your manager to add an extra reason for that. And you can completely customize the list here. So it's really interesting for keeping sight of what's going on with your different cards and the state they are on. For better visualization and organizations, you can also customize color codes and you can also choose to the display orders of the statuses in the drop-down menus using a drag and drop systems. And why is this useful? It's actually super useful for a view called the Kanban view, which, unlike the list view, provides you with a synthetic and visual overviews of your cards organized by these states. And as you can see, with the colors and the orders, make it super efficient to manage your team meetings, for example.
Well, that's so great, Charlie. Thank you. Just tell me, would you like to show us how to do if we now want to track the status and action of each salesperson over a given period, perhaps also in relation to given objectives?
Sure, it's actually a good idea. We can go to reportings and we can go to the synthesis tabs. Perfect. We're already on the right place. So you can add targets to your manager resource throughout the resource card configurations. And here I already put in advance some on Jenny. So when you want to see it and monitor it, you need first to select Jenny or the manager scopes, and then the breakdown that match the targets. So it was a monthly breakdown. And I also select the display because I want to see specifically the target that I had added. You see that the screen changed.
Mm,
On my monthly breakdown, I have now green numbers and red numbers. This is actually really self-explanatory. If
yeah.
it's green, they actually did either what I was asking or either better than was already assigned. And if it's red, they failed or they need to work a little bit harder. So it's make it super visual to add targets. And of course, you can see the targets, but the manager as well.
So easy. Thank you. Is there anything you want to add? Any other best practices, maybe?
Sure, there is actually, we need to go back to the global settings because we are not done yet. So we will go through the HR and sales evaluation tabs now. Normally, that will be reminding you of something. It's actually everything related to the tab named the same way for candidates and resources. And so everything that you see here is linked to candidates and resource technical data. These are the fields you can use to qualify them and so filter them when you try to find the best opportunity of work for them and to match them with clients. You can easily explore these sections. It's really self-explanatory. But we can always talk about some of them to be a little bit more precise. If you need to assess a consultant skills and to give it a rating from 1 to 5, then tools it's what you are looking for because once you apply them to a card, you can add the level of expertise. If you need to add another layers, information about the profile, then we would recommend to use activity area because it's particularly flexible. It's allow you to add category, such as determining the precise profile of the person, add certain type of certificates you wish to keep an eye on, and so forth. So that's super useful to, again, add layers that you can easily filter on. On the right side, we have others opportunities and settings, as you can see. If you are using paid job boards or business introduction leads, for example, you can add sources of origins for your candidates or CRM cards, and they are super useful to analyze the actual ROI of these platforms or these means of getting leads. Again, it's flexible, so you can add as many as you like on the matters. And I would like to finish to end on this part with the mobility area because it's really important to understand how this specifically work. It's a nesting doll systems, meaning France is within Europe, which is within the world. So everything is connected to maximize the filtering ability. Again, if you do not wish to use all of this geographic zone, that's perfectly fine, but we would recommend that you archive them, not delete them, because if you delete them, you get a chance of actually breaking down the entire structures, and it's hard to bring to actually recreate afterwards. Moving on to another part of the systems, it's called the Opportunity and Project tab. Again, several repositories here can be customized and all very easy to understand. It's mostly about the opportunity and project tabs or the different setting of project and opportunities. Here, I would actually like to highlight a new feature, which is called Boon Suggest. It's a profile suggestion tool that you can use to work on your opportunities. And based on the settings that you configured here, the feature can do several things automatically when you are trying to position the candidates or resource. They can search for the perfect person only in specific parameters, so certain agency of the database. They can exclude certain candidates of resource based on their states. For example, candidates marked as do not contact them or resource marked as went out. You won't be allowed to see them in the systems. And lastly, they can pre-filters on what we saw earlier, so activities area, tools, expertise areas. And another very interesting thing for me here is that either you choose to apply it as a filter because you know your database is clean and it would be easy to use, or you know that you might not have done the jobs completely correct and well to maintain your database. So you can actually use the activity as well as the tool, the industries, to use them as keywords instead inside the searching mode for positionings.
Oh, okay. Can you show us what it looks like on the interface, please, after the configuration?
Sure, of course, it's actually would make it easier to
Yeah,
understand. So
absolutely.
let's go to opportunities. I think I have the perfect one for that, so which is called the digital project managers. So important here, these opportunities is already qualified. So I have all of the informations, and at the bottom of the page, I've added the tools that I'm looking for, the activities area, the expertise areas, and the place locations. So what I have to do now is simply go to the positioning tabs. As usual, I click on the plus buttons, but as you can see, there is a specific section now called Profile Suggestion with the Boon Suggest Magic Ones. And I can go either on candidates or resource. It finds two people on the candidates, so let's go there. And as you can see, all the filters are already pre-applied, following what was set into the administration sections. So my last job would be to review the candidate that have been selected, but it normally should have narrowed the number down quite a lot. So I just have to make the final selections because you have the final say in it. Super easy to use.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. I think we can go back one last time to the administrations because I would like to check what we call the template sections, and that Siri starts mentioning a little bit earlier on the introductions. Here, I will talk about two specific tabs that are of interest when you talk about recruitments and sales-specific settings. First would be the shared action template sections. When you create or a manager create an action in Boond, you have the options of creating templates, and that will save you times. The one that you see on the screen, for example, is an interview frame. That way, whenever you go on an interview, you already have everything built for you to take your notes faster. These templates, depending on your rights, you have the possibility to share them with an agency, a list of manager, and so on. And these specific sections of the administration give you, as an administrator, an overview of what's going on in the action templates, who they are shared with, and give you the possibility to review them and correct them if needed. And actually, same thing applies with the next tab, which is called this shared search. You can filter what you like in all the different modules of Boond and create safe search. And you can actually share the safe search. And here you can see all of them that have been saved into the systems, who they are actually shared with. And also have the possibility to go and see what they pre-filters to make them modification afterwards. Again, the idea is to build templates, action templates, and shared cert as a team and to make them available for all the interested parties. And I think that now it's time for a quick recap before moving on to the next part. Back to you, Cyril.
It is time. Thank you, Charlie. All right, so my time to try and write as much as you did. Okay, so for the recap of the pre-sales and recruitment administration. So as you will have understood, the main repositories are in the global settings sections. The actions that we have focused on will allow you, on the one hand, to keep a record of your exchanges, and on the other hand, to quantify your actions to have effective reporting and dashboards. Also, you can set objectives visible in the reportings as we've shown you. The states will allow you to set up your processes. You can reuse them in the Kanban views and monitor in an optimized way your opportunities, your positionings, but also your candidates in the recruitment process. Then we've seen that you can qualify both your positionings and your candidates in the HR and sales evaluations. You can also qualify resources and contacts, which means that you can also match different elements together and therefore optimize your prospecting and therefore your research for the right skills. It also allows you, and this is quite important, to produce documents that will be qualified, thanks in particular to the other templates in the application that allow you to generate technical files or even sales deal. Thanks to the opportunities and project tab, you will be able to define your activity, manage your default settings, as we will see a little bit later, and above all, set up the Boon Suggest feature so that you can easily find the right skills for your client's needs. Then, thanks to the templates, you can standardize your processes, you can save time, you can be more collaborative, you can produce documents based on templates. You'll be able to create action templates, and this will help your new colleagues by offering them refined templates that have already been approved by you or the administrator. To do so, do not forget to share them with the team, obviously. Then in the useful applications by default, we have here emailing and HR flow that we wanted to highlight. Emailing will enable you to save time by keeping track of your exchanges thanks to the creation of automatic action. And with HR flow, you are going to be able to create a candidate in 2 clicks directly from a CV. Part of the other useful application right there, we have Gmail or Microsoft that you can synchronize with your calendar in your inbox, and other apps such as quotations, doc templates, and e-signature, just to name a few. All right, so now we'll let Marion take the floor to talk about HR management in the administration.
Yeah, thank you, Cyril. Thank you, Charlie. So let's get down to another fun stuff, HR management. And let's start right away with our legal agency to take a detailed look at possible changes. So first, we'll go on our legal agency in the Information tab and we'll check on the Global Configuration section, which is highlighting the parameter that will help you to calculate average daily costs as well as manage your units of works. So as you can see, I can modify the agency's load factor to match my calculation method. This factor will be included in your contract as with the number of working days. As this is the basis for calculation, it will have a direct impact on your reporting since it will affect all new contracts created from this agency. If you enter your various costs correctly on the platform, expenses, benefits, and purchase, we invite you to leave 1.5 as we do in France or adapt to your organization or country to represent employer charges only. And if it's not the case, you can inflate it a little bit. A word about currencies if you are a multi-agency company. This will also be reflected in all new agency contracts and projects. About work units, day and hour will have an impact on all new projects and timesheets concerned by this entity. And just before switching tabs, I'll just highlight the possibility of modifying the agency's calendar, as you'll be reviewing it in my second part with currencies. So once that's done, we can go on timesheet and expenses tab. Here, generally speaking, we'll find the same logic on this page. You can first force the creation of documents on a specific date of the month and choose the automatically remind by email your collaborator, from this date until they do timesheets and expenses. For all new documents, you can decide on a common or separate default workflow for your timesheets, expenses, and absence requests, and customize them if some of your resources have exceptions directly on the resource card. Also, there are 4 main activity families in BoondManager: production, internal, absence, and exceptional, but there's nothing to stop you from distinguishing your times by using labels. You can set up also an alert system and make them blocking or non-blocking to limit data entry errors that could later have an impact on payroll and invoicing. Finally, each year, you can update the kilometer scales for your expenses as well as the increment for your absence accounts if needed. A little tip for the administrator here: if you want to create a new agency, you can copy the setting of your agency to the new one by clicking at the top right button. Perfect. So now, unsurprisingly, we now turn to the HR data tab. So the settings here concern everything to do with HR contracts and payroll variables. So let's take a closer look. This is where I'll be adding benefits in order to refine my ADCs, improve my financial summaries, but also to prepare my payroll file. So I'll be able to indicate whether my benefit is recurring or non-recurring, as well as contractual or non-contractual. These elements will have an impact on all data using my contract ADC right up to reporting. A word of advice when creating a benefit, once registered, the frequency of the benefit can no longer be modified. If you've made a mistake, delete it and start again. And if the benefit has already been used, archive it rather than delete it, as Charlie said before. Finally, if 50% of your company has the benefit, maybe you can activate it by default in order to save times while you're creating a new resource. I would like to add that if you're paying attention, I used the word new several times in my explanation. Indeed, changes made in the agency are effective immediately, but have an impact on the creation of new data only. So the information and HR data tabs will have an impact on contracts, while activities and expenses will have effect on resources intranet configuration, as well as its times, expenses, and absences.
Marion, actually, I think that maybe I could benefit from your help because
Yeah.
one of the manager, well, sorry, is actually changing contract. So it's David Kim,
hmm
and he will have access soon to a new advantages. Could you show me how to manage that, please? Because I'm not
Yeah,
sure how to do it.
sure, no problem. It's super easy. So take David Kim, for example. So let's go on the administrative tab, and he currently has several advantages for his contract here. So we'll now benefit from meal vouchers, for example.
Mhm.
So we'll issue an addendum to terminate the contract that carries the current benefits and allow him to benefit from the new ones. That's it.
Easy. So that's where that takes the dates with the new addendum. Cool. Thank you
Yeah,
for your help.
exactly. You're welcome. So now let's take a look at the global settings parameters for the HR data. This configuration will enable you to meet your analytical and organizational needs and make your navigation and searches more fluent. As Charlie showed you, there is first the Actions and States tab. So on the left part, there is the Actions part. So you can do the same, create different states and actions to reflect your internal processes from onboarding to the exit of a resource. In addition to all the elements mentioned by Charlie, I'll be able to create different typology for HR interviews, astonishment reports, or medical examination. And this will open the door once again to a new way of working. I'll be also able to set up alerts so as not to miss anything and to keep up to date with all mandatory interviews. There, also from the HR tab, we are going to find several important repositories. It's here that highlight the notions of external, internal, as well as structure and billable, which will have an impact on the breakdown of my costs globally on my platform. So pay attention to your reporting. What's more, with resource typology, you will be able to meet your analytical needs, categorize for better analysis, and this will open up new possibilities for you in terms of parameter customizable by resource type, for example, with the survey application. Also on this page, I'm going to find several contracts, variables such as type, position, working hours, and reason for termination. This will be essential if, for example, you use doc template application to generate your contracts, but also relevant for your analysis. For example, your HR balances or the proportions of different contracts termination. The tip here is to put the most frequently used one at the top of the list and archive the unused one to improve your navigation. So now parameters and repository are in place. So let's talk organization from the template section, which is more business oriented. Let's on the template section, sorry, and we will be focused on the forms. So this is where you can create forms for your resource files to collect information and prepare for various interviews, such as HR interviews. It's simple. You get two versions of a form shared between manager and resource. So if you modify the form after sending it, only your version will be modified. And finally, my favorite feature is the task list in the template section, which allow you to display your processes and quads according to module, type, status, or urgency. Take, for example, the departure of one of your employees and the task you need to complete before saying goodbye. What you need to know is that it's not possible to delete a task that's already been used, so archive it if you need. As with forms, you can only access this section of the administration, handy for a branch manager, for example. And it's also worth noting that as soon as a person has right access to the forms information tab, he or she can check or uncheck items on the list.
Marian, could you show us how it looks like from a card point of view?
Yeah, sure. So, once you created the to-do list by defining the different variables that make it up, and then you have the choice of adding task or subtasks. For example, on resource quad, there's a list of things to do before hiring a resource. I find my onboarding to-do list on a resource sheet in future arrival stages to be onboarded status. And depending on progress, I'll be able to tick off what's been done. And I can do the same between tasks and subtasks, for example, gather administrative documents. These are collaborative, so other people can indicate whether or not the task has been completed. And if I change the state, of course, the list disappears since it's linked to that state. So now it is in current state. You won't be able to see the task, while if you register to the onboarded state, you will see the tasks. Um, so that's it for this for this feature.
Oh, that's actually very cool and easy to keep an eye on everything. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you, and to Marians to show us what's the most important for human resource admin. Let me do a very quick recap on the matters. In legal agency sections, we'll be able to customize the resource activities by entities and manage the different benefits that will appear on their contracts. So, super important. The global parameters, so global settings, will enable us to manage repositories, to categorize resources, and use filters for relevant extractions. This will also enable us to determine the field to be highlighted on standard contracts to be generated from Boond. And finally, the to-dos list, action templates, and form will support you throughout the life cycle of your employees and help you on your day-to-day management. A little extra we wanted you to have is that we have several apps that can be useful for human resources management inside of Boon. We add a few examples at the bottom of this slide here, but just to name a few, we have extract payrolls that's allowed you to do custom extract to get the information about your resource activities and all the payroll variables. We have internet accounts that allowed you to keep an eye on all the intranet account, as the name said, in the systems to see if you have people who should be deactivated that are not. And for example, also doc templates that allowed you to create custom documents perfect to create contracts, of course. Now let's move on to the last part of this webinar, which will be everything related to productions administrations, and that would be Cyril part.
Yep, absolutely. So thank you so much, Marion and Charlie, for all of your very precious advice for the first part. And now let's move on to the last part, the last section, which is everything about production admin. So production includes the entire cycle after the sales of a project, meaning project management, timesheet, invoices, and stuff like that. Okay, so let's go back to BoondManager in the administration. And let's focus here on the global settings. So I'm going to highlight two important tabs here in this section. The first one will be about about opportunities and projects. This tab is used to determine how your project will work in Boot, which is actually quite important for your activity. If you are committed to a means-based approach, then you will use the delegation of skill mode with monthly invoicing by default, while if you are more committed to a result-based approach, then you will choose the fixed price or the package mode, which allows you to obtain the amount still to be done and to have invoicing by default on the schedule. We also have here the type column, which is quite important, which is for you to know if your project will be internal, that will impact some of your indicators in the reporting. And also you can indicate if your project will work in unit of works. So that will depend if you prefer to invoice them per hour or per day. Also, other type of projects that we can speak about here, which will be the recruitment type of project. So if you're like a recruitment agency, or the product mode, which is like for us, as a software, that will be good if you actually sell products or subscription to your clients, for example. Also, you can actually indicate when you calculate your profitability, the method of calculation that you prefer. We usually advise you to use the brand rates, but you can actually also use the margin rate. So that's the two different ways that you can use. Also, something which is quite good is that you can actually create up to um, 3 delivery types, working on 3 different scenarios, which will be easy to new delivery for a new project, easy to delivery renewal, part of an existing project, or easy to new delivery. So something actually for a backup, like, another person working on this project for, again, here, an existing project. Last but not least, what you can also manage here will be the delivery orders. So you can base them on the default Boon template, but then you can also obviously customize your different wording here, part of this template. Okay, now let's have a look at the billing tab. So this is where you will find all of the drop-down list for invoicing, as well as the labels used to describe your invoice items. By default, here, the label on the invoice shows service delivery, so for the delegation of skills kind of project, and then the period with the month and the year. But obviously, you are free to add custom titles. Please note that this title will be common to all of the invoices for all of your agencies. Again, something else that you can do here will be to add other VATs if you need more. So just click there, add a VAT, and add the number, and then save. In the same way, at the bottom of the page, you can add more payment terms if you need more. Same here, just click there, choose then the type, and then you do your customization. Okay, now let's have a look at the legal agencies for the production administration. Right there, let's go back to the UK agency. Here, so we've talked about it, but then again here, the information tab has got an impact on the invoicing. Everything that you put in terms of here, the name of the legal agency, the email, the phone, and obviously the legal information at the bottom of the page will be reused for the footer of the invoices. So just please pay attention to what you put here, and that will be on official documents. Then something also which is quite important here, that's the billing tab. That's where you can set the default settings that you want to see on your purchases order. So then you don't have to start all over again each time you create one. But then obviously you could have different parameter based on your customer. So what you put here by default won't prevent you from customizing your orders once they have been issued. But then the idea is to try to save time with the most common settings. Again, here, something which is quite important on this page will be, for example, the fact you add more IBANs. If you have different IBANs for your legal entity, you can also use factoring if you want to add some factor IBAN. You can also, and that's quite important, define your reference mask, and then with the what we call the numbering starting. So if you want maybe to renew that every year in your system, please note that if you have different legal agency, and if you want the numbering to be different for those legal agency, then the reference mask has to be different for all of your legal agency. Also, that's something that we want to highlight, that in Europe, that for each country, then we have what we call the electronic invoicing, which is actually now put in place based on the calendar. in BoondManager, everything is ready for that new legal way of now sending uh, invoices to your customer. So that's good to know. Okay, then let's have a look at the Advanced Setting tab. Here, just for a quick look to save time, this tab will help you again have reference mask for the naming of the opportunities and the naming of the project, so that you can reuse the different variables that you have here at your disposal. Also, in addition to that, you can authorize certain here, right there, so like, benefits linked to the delivery, for example. You can also do the configuration for the exceptional activity if you are using that part of your project and your deliveries. Then let's have to finish a quick focus on the apps and marketplace, as there are some very key applications that we want to highlight for the production. For example, obviously there are the emailing application that you will use to send your invoices to your customer, which is actually quite good in the settings that you can define some templates that you will use to send invoices. Like I've got one for the initial sending on the invoices, another one for the reminder for overdue payments. And when you actually create this, you can decide here on the templates that you are going to use every time, and that will help you save time. That's very good. Same for here, the sending of the overdue payments or overdue bills, sorry, of the invoices. All right. The fact, something that we also spoke about, that was the fact to update the different status on the platform. That's obviously applied to the invoices, which is quite important to know where you are at. And that's something that you can also reuse on your dashboards, on your reporting, on your alerts. So if I go to my dashboard here, for example, I've got some different cards that I have already configured, like the one for due invoices. So I've got 12 of them. I know that they are due because I actually use the states, which is not paid yet, and because the date of that invoice already belongs to the past. So that will really help me know what I need to focus on to maybe send reminders to my customer. And I cannot finish this part, about the application without speaking about post-production. Just here, I'm sure that you already know that, but that, application is the superstar one for the invoicing, and that's the one that you will use to be very efficient in the way that you actually generate your invoice for your customer. Okay, so I think, Marion, it's time for you to recap this last part.
Yeah, last recap. So as we've seen with Cyril, we're able to set up different types of action and states for efficient monitoring of your projects on invoicing. You can also set up precise dashboards to monitor the health of your production, linked of course to actions and status. And we've also shown you quickly our emailing tool that enables you to send an email and create the action directly on your invoice card, as well as change the status automatically when your invoices are sent or relaunched to save time. In the global settings, we also looked at the notions of repositories to modify different wordings for your invoicing. This will have an impact on your purchase order and invoicing sections, but we also looked at how to do this for the deliveries and projects part with typologies in particular. We've also focused on the invoicing tab, our factoring solutions, and our increment masks in this section of our global settings. For time management, we've highlighted all the parameters linked to exceptional activity, as well as the distinction between different types of production that you can find in the activities tab and timesheets. And finally, we looked at the purchasing section, which gives us the option of categorizing our purchases, making it easier to search, analyze, and extract. To finish, we've seen some essential and unavoidable applications of post-production, as Siri said, the superstar for billing. Accounting and payroll also, which lets you generate customized extractions based on your accounting software. We have also emailing. We've seen the possibility of sending emails by synchronizing your email address with BoondManager. And the final one, SEPA, which allows you to generate the file containing transfer orders. We're done now with our presentation on the administration subject, as it is a vast but fascinating topic. And we'll now go through your questions. To remind you, don't forget to use the Q&A or Q&R section, and we'll answer any questions from now.
Thank you so much, Charlie and Marion.
Thank you, Jude. Thanks for
Thank
everybody for
you.
joining as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Let's
everybody.
see.
And we sorry for the interruption that we had right in the middle. So,
Yeah.
That's the
well, we
risk when you're a go live.
yeah, we lost some people in between, so we are sorry about that.
So actually, thanks everybody to came back.
Yeah, for those for
Great.
those for those who
Appreciate it.
actually came back, yeah,
Yeah.
we really love you. I
Let's
I
see.
think that I think we've got one question about the as we've shown the fact that we can actually have objectives for the manager
Sure.
in the reporting, and somebody asked a question about the way that we can actually configure and set those objectives. So maybe I can
Perfect.
actually show that quickly.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so when you do so, like if I actually use Jenny as an example, when you go to the profile of a person, sorry, when you go to the configuration of the profile of a person, that's where you can actually find the targets for a manager. And in the target part, so we see here that, that's all of the indicators that we've seen in the reporting. You can actually create them from there. So you actually click on the plus, then you choose the category of a reporting, like the commercial one. Then you choose the indicator that you want to work on. And then you just set it, with the targets, then the number of that target, the periodicities, it's annual, weekly. That's why, that's quite important, because then to find that, then you will need to have the same periodicity in the reporting. And then you just click on create, and that will be a new target added on reporting that can then actually follow, thanks to the green and red number afterwards.
Easy, right?
That's easy, yeah.
Oh, let's see. Question from Matthew, actually. Do you have the possibility to track automatically emails from Gmail sent to candidates or customers into the field action in Boond when contact details correctly filled? I'd say it's part automatic
Mm,
because we made the choice of not linking automatically your mailbox to Boond because the flow of email would be tremendous. But if you add the widgets and on
mm.
the Gmail side, you will actually have extra widgets on your messaging interface of Gmail that's allowed you to push an email that you receive or send from your very own side of the messaging to push it into Boond as an action, to rasterize it as an action. So it's not automatically in a sense that it won't be detecting automatically if it's a candidate, a resource, or a contact that you know, and
Mm.
straight away push the email inside the systems. But you can actually do it manually because you think the email is important. You can actually push it inside of Boond.
And that's actually also available for the Microsoft user. So we have it for Google and Microsoft. Yeah.
And that way you can see what your manager are doing in the systems, if they contact people or not. And you can create different variations of typology of actions for emailing, actually.
Yeah,
You can have
that's
the
correct.
regular email and the push CVs and that kind of things. You're welcome.
Um,
Um,
we have another question about the fact that we said that we could actually customize the workflow validation on each resource card, because as we've seen, it's something that we obviously recommend um, putting on the administration in the legal agency. So then you will put here the most common scenario. But if ever you have to change that for a person because of a specific context, then yeah, it's possible. Then if we actually go back to resource cards here, that's the configuration again here. Actually, I was there. And on that configuration part, on the advanced settings, that's where you will see here the different way to change sorry, the workflow. I was talking about the different working type. That's the workflow. I was talking about the workflow. Then you see that by default here, it's based on the agency, but you could decide to say that for Jenny Tussauds, it's not Kilian, the one managing the validation of the timesheet, but then it's another person. So I could click on custom and then put something completely different for her. Then let's say it's by default just the line manager, and then save that, and then This time it's custom here. So then you could do that for every resource card for the timesheet, expenses, and absent request if you need to.
Hey, speaking of timesheets, actually, can you show us how to configure the dates to automatically send notification emails to the resource?
Yeah, sure. That's a good reminder. It's something that we actually do in the administration of the platform and for each legal agency. So let's go back to the UK one in the activities and expenses tab. This is where you define the date of document creation and mail to resources. So here we choose the 22nd of each month, which means that if at that moment of the month you haven't created and validated your timesheet yet, then that will be automatically created uh, and then say it's pending for your approval. And then at the same time, as a person, you will get a notification for you to know that it's time to enter your times.
And then it will actually remind you to do your time every day until you actually validate the time. So
That's
that way
correct.
you're sure that the consultant will do the job and that you can counter validate and start working on your payrolls and billings, because that's super important as well.
That's correct. Yeah. I think that apparently, I think we're done with the questions. Let's check. What do we have? Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's it. All
we're good.
right. I think that it's maybe time to finish this webinar. So thank you so much for joining. We were happy to see you back here for this new webinar in English. And normally when you leave that webinar, you have a quick survey for your satisfaction. So feel free to leave a comments. That will be always good for us to know, and then to suggest any other topic that you would like us to talk about for the next webinar. All right, so thanks everyone. Have a good day and see you
Thank
For
soon.
joining.
you.
Take
Have a
care of
good day.
yourself.
Bye
Bye bye.
Bye
bye.
bye.